The last day of the war was filled with fire and smoke. Across the skies of the alien world, great ships burned as they fell from the heavens. The Krell, a fierce enemy that had brought destruction to many planets, had finally been defeated. The joint armies of humans and their allies stood weary but victorious. Among the soldiers who survived was Ryan, a young human fighter. His armor was scratched and scarred, but his spirit remained strong. He had fought on the front lines for weeks, never giving up, never running away. Many had fallen beside him, yet he carried on, driven by the belief that survival was not enough. Victory was needed to protect those who could not fight. As the dust settled, Ryan stood upon the battlefield and looked around. The land was broken, filled with craters and ruins of machines. Smoke curled into the air like dark ribbons. The silence that followed the end of the battle felt strange, almost too quiet for a place that had known nothing but thunder and chaos. For the first time in many months, Ryan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was soon called to the capital city, where leaders of many worlds gathered. The hall was vast, built with tall pillars that shone with crystal light. Kings, queens, generals, and elders of alien races all came together to honor those who had brought them victory. The war was long, but now there was a chance for peace. The council declared that every hero who had risked his or her life in the battle would be given a reward. The rewards were not small. Lands, riches, ships, and titles were offered to those who fought bravely. One by one, soldiers stepped forward to receive what they had earned. Some asked for wealth to rebuild their families. Others asked for ships to explore the stars. Each choice was honored. When Ryan's turn came, the hall grew quiet. He was not the most decorated soldier, nor was he the highest ranked, but everyone had heard of his courage. He had saved both human and alien fighters alike. He had stood in places where others would not, and he had turned the tide of many battles with his stubborn will. The council respected him deeply, and all leaned forward, curious about what he would request. A tall elder spoke, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Human soldier, Ryan," he said, "you fought with great honor. You may ask for any reward within reason. Land, wealth, command of ships, all can be yours. Speak now, and it shall be granted." Ryan did not speak right away. He looked around the hall, past the golden treasures, past the maps of territories and fleets. His eyes rested on the throne where the royal family of the allied kingdom sat. Among them was Princess Alira, dressed in silver robes that shone under the crystal light. She was not just a figure of beauty but of strength. During the war, she had inspired her people to fight when despair was strongest. Ryan remembered the speeches she had given, the way her voice had carried across the battlefields through the comms, urging soldiers not to give up. Her words had lifted his heart in the darkest hours. She was more than a princess, she was a symbol of hope. When he finally spoke, his words surprised everyone. "I ask for no land, no riches, and no ships," Ryan said firmly. "My request is simple. I choose the princess. Not as a prize, but as someone I wish to protect and learn from. If she will allow it, let me stand by her side." The hall erupted with murmurs. Some nobles gasped in shock. Never before had a soldier asked for such a reward. To them, it seemed bold, even strange. Why would a man turn away from gold and power, only to ask for the company of the princess? Princess Alira herself was stunned. She looked at Ryan with wide eyes, unsure of what to say. She had been raised to see soldiers as distant, loyal servants of the kingdom. No one had ever spoken such words to her. Was this human's request born from pride, or was it something else? The council turned to the king, waiting for his judgment. The king studied Ryan with a sharp gaze. He saw not arrogance in the soldier's eyes, but sincerity. This man was not asking to own or command, but to serve and protect. After a long pause, the king gave a small nod. "If my daughter agrees, then so it shall be," the king said. His voice was calm but carried authority. All eyes moved to Princess Alira. She hesitated, torn between surprise and curiosity. She could refuse and end the matter. Yet something in Ryan's gaze held her attention. It was not the look of a man seeking reward, it was the look of someone who carried a promise deep in his heart. At last, Alira spoke softly. "Very well. I accept." The hall filled with whispers once again. The choice was made, and the path ahead was uncertain. For Ryan, what began as a reward was already becoming something far greater. For Alira, what started as a strange request would soon change her life forever. And so, the story of the human soldier and the princess began not with riches or crowns, but with a promise born on the ashes of war. After the ceremony in the grand hall, Ryan escorted Princess Alira through the palace corridors. The walls were lined with intricate carvings, depicting battles long past and victories of the royal family. The air smelled of polished stone and distant flowers from the gardens outside. Despite the beauty, the palace felt heavy with expectation, a place where every step and word was watched. Alira walked beside Ryan, her hands clasped in front of her. She had spent her life learning etiquette, strategy, and diplomacy, yet the presence of the human soldier made her feel uncertain in a new way. She was not sure what to expect from him. Most humans she had met were either soldiers who followed orders or diplomats who spoke with smooth words. Ryan was neither. His expression showed focus, respect, and something else she could not name. "Ryan," she said carefully, "why did you choose me as your reward? Others would have asked for ships, land, or gold." Ryan met her gaze. "Because I have seen the hope you inspire," he said. "I have fought alongside soldiers who believe in your leadership, who hear your words and find courage. I want to understand that. I want to help protect it, not take anything from it." Alira studied him, noticing the honesty in his eyes. He did not speak with arrogance or greed. She had expected the war hero to boast or to flaunt his choice, but he did not. Instead, he carried himself with quiet strength, as if he had already fought battles much greater than any treasure could give. "You are different from other humans I have met," she said. "Most see the royal family as symbols or tools. You see us as people." Ryan nodded. "Because you are people, not symbols," he replied. "And because I have learned that what matters most is not what we win, but what we protect." For a moment, Alira was silent. She had grown up surrounded by advisors, nobles, and courtiers, all of whom measured every word and every smile. She had never spoken to a soldier like this before. It felt strange, and yet, somehow, refreshing. The palace gardens offered a view of the city below, with its towers and glowing streets. Ryan led her there, careful to step lightly over the stone paths. Flowers of bright colors swayed gently in the wind, and birds sang softly among the trees. Alira inhaled deeply, feeling a small piece of peace in the chaos of her life. "You make this world seem simpler than it is," she said with a faint smile. "But I know it is not." "No world is simple," Ryan answered. "Not Earth, not here. But even in chaos, people can choose courage, honesty, and kindness. That is something worth protecting." Alira looked at him, her thoughts turning inward. She had spent years learning how to rule, how to make decisions that would affect thousands of lives, yet she had never thought of protection in this way. She had focused on law, on order, on diplomacy. But protection through understanding and courage. That was new. The next few days were filled with adjustment. Ryan was given a room in the palace near Alira's, and he spent time learning the customs of the court. At first, some nobles whispered behind closed doors. They questioned why a human soldier would be allowed such proximity to the princess. They worried about influence, about breaches of protocol, about appearances. But Ryan did not try to impress anyone. He did not seek power or attention. Instead, he quietly observed, listened, and learned. He learned the names of the guards, the schedules of the kitchens, and the habits of the palace staff. He learned the formalities required of visitors and the subtle ways that courtiers conveyed opinions without words. Alira noticed this attention to detail. She realized that his choice had not been made lightly. He had not chosen her for amusement or recognition. He had chosen her because he understood responsibility, and he was willing to carry it alongside her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Alira invited Ryan to walk along the palace ramparts. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of the sea from the distant coast. "I did not expect to find someone like you," she said quietly. "Someone who does not judge me for who I am, but sees what I do and why I do it." Ryan looked out at the horizon. "We are all judged," he said. "But those who fight for others, those who lead, they deserve allies, not critics. I wish to be that ally." Alira felt a sense of trust growing inside her. She realized that this human soldier was not merely a reward of the war. He was a companion in thought and action, someone who could help her face challenges she had never imagined. By the end of the week, whispers in the court began to change. Some nobles still doubted him, but many began to see that Ryan's presence did not weaken the princess, it strengthened her. Alira's confidence grew, and she began to rely on his advice, his perspective, and his courage. The bond between the soldier and the princess had begun. It was subtle at first, built on respect, trust, and shared experiences. But even in those early days, it was clear that what started as a reward would become something far greater. The human soldier and the princess were no longer just figures of war or royalty, they were allies, and perhaps something more, united by courage and understanding. Days passed in the palace as Ryan and Princess Alira grew accustomed to one another's presence. The soldier did not demand attention, nor did the princess treat him as a mere companion. Instead, they began to discover shared strengths and lessons, learning from each other in quiet moments and careful conversation. Each morning, Ryan rose early to train in the palace courtyard. He practiced with his sword and exercised to keep his body ready for any danger. Alira watched him at first from a distance, unsure whether to join or remain behind the safety of her chambers. But soon, she approached, curious to understand the discipline that had allowed him to survive countless battles. "You move with precision," Alira said one morning, stepping lightly onto the training grounds. "I can see why you were such a skilled fighter." Ryan paused and nodded respectfully. "Every movement has a purpose," he said. "Not every soldier survives without planning each step carefully." Alira tried to mirror his movements, awkward at first, but determined. Ryan guided her patiently, adjusting her stance and explaining how strength came not only from the body but from focus and clarity of mind. She was surprised to feel how much energy her small movements required, and yet she felt satisfaction in learning something new, something practical. As days turned into weeks, Ryan began accompanying Alira on walks throughout the palace city. He introduced her to the people she ruled, showing her their daily struggles and joys. Alira had grown up seeing her subjects from a distance, through reports and advisors. Now, walking among them with Ryan, she saw faces of hope, fatigue, and determination. "You see things differently with him," a young servant whispered to her. "He does not look at the crown or the title. He sees the person beneath it." Alira realized it was true. Ryan's perspective was unlike anyone she had known. He did not treat her as unreachable royalty. He treated her as a person whose decisions mattered, and whose strength could grow with understanding and practice. Ryan also shared stories of Earth, speaking of vast oceans, green forests, and deserts that stretched endlessly under the sun. Alira listened with fascination. She had never imagined a world so different from her own, where humans faced challenges that required both courage and resourcefulness. She realized that humans, though small in number across the galaxy, possessed a determination and adaptability unlike any other species she had known. In return, Alira spoke of her people, of her kingdom's history and the struggles that had shaped her life. She explained the responsibilities that weighed on her as a princess and a future queen. Ryan listened carefully, asking questions that revealed his respect and genuine interest. Each answer seemed to bring them closer, building a bond of trust that neither had expected when the war ended. One afternoon, Ryan and Alira climbed a small hill outside the palace to overlook the city. The sun painted the horizon in shades of gold and pink. From that height, the world seemed calm and endless, a place full of possibilities. "I never knew it could feel like this," Alira said softly. "So peaceful, so full of life. I thought my world was only duty and expectation." Ryan smiled faintly. "Life is many things at once. We must fight, we must protect, but we must also see the beauty around us. It reminds us why we continue." Alira nodded, taking in his words. She realized that through Ryan's presence, she was learning to see the world differently. She was learning that strength came not only from authority and power but also from empathy, courage, and shared experience. Their bond became visible to others in the palace. Guards spoke of Ryan as a steady presence, someone who could be trusted with both protection and advice. Courtiers began to notice that the princess seemed calmer, more thoughtful, and more confident in her decisions. Even the king, who had initially been cautious, observed the connection and found comfort in knowing that his daughter was in good hands. At night, Ryan often stayed near Alira's chambers, not as a guard alone but as a companion in conversation. They discussed strategy, philosophy, and even the simplest joys of life, like music and storytelling. The princess discovered that Ryan could listen deeply, without judgment or interruption. His respect for her thoughts created a space where she could speak freely, a rare gift in her life of careful observation and control. One evening, while watching the stars above the palace, Alira spoke quietly. "You have changed how I see my responsibilities. You remind me that I am more than my title. I am a person who can choose courage and understanding." Ryan nodded. "And you are someone who inspires others, not by command alone, but by example. That is why I chose to be here. Not for reward, but because I believe in what you represent." In those moments, both understood that their relationship had grown into more than duty or reward. It was a partnership, born from respect and shared experience, strengthened by trust and courage. They were learning from each other, shaping one another in ways neither had imagined. By the end of the month, their bond had become known throughout the palace. Soldiers and citizens alike began to see that Ryan's choice was not a simple reward, it was a beginning. A beginning of understanding, of strength, and of unity. The human soldier and the princess were no longer merely symbols of war and royalty. Together, they were a force that could face challenges, change perspectives, and inspire hope across the galaxy. The palace, which had seemed calm in the weeks after the war, began to feel heavier. The whispers that had followed Ryan since the day he asked for Princess Alira as his reward grew louder. Some nobles admired his courage and sincerity, but others saw him as an outsider who threatened tradition and authority. Ryan noticed the subtle looks in the hallways, the slight hesitations of the guards, and the quiet conversations that stopped when he entered. He did not confront anyone directly, but he remained alert. He had faced enemies on battlefields across the galaxy, and he knew that danger could come not only from beyond the stars but also from those who hid behind polite smiles and carefully chosen words. Alira was aware of the tension too. She had grown up surrounded by court politics, where every word, every glance, could carry meaning. At first, she tried to ignore it, believing that her people would eventually accept Ryan if they saw his loyalty. Yet, she could not ignore the subtle actions of those who whispered, plotted, and questioned the human soldier's presence. One afternoon, a council meeting was called. The great hall was filled with nobles, advisors, and military leaders. The topic was simple: the future of the kingdom after the war. But beneath the formal agenda, a more dangerous conversation took place. Some spoke of Ryan as if he were a threat, suggesting that allowing a human soldier to stay so close to the princess could weaken the authority of the throne. Others hinted that Alira's judgment was influenced too heavily by this outsider. Alira listened carefully, her expression calm, but inside she felt a spark of concern. She had trusted Ryan, but she also knew the palace had walls built not of stone, but of tradition and suspicion. If she did not act wisely, whispers could grow into action, and action could endanger the human she had chosen and the peace she hoped to maintain. After the meeting, Alira spoke to Ryan privately. They walked along the palace corridors, the light of the setting sun casting long shadows on the stone walls. "I know what they think," she said quietly. "Some believe you are a danger to the crown. Others think I am foolish to let you be near me. You must understand, this is not a battle we fight with swords." Ryan nodded, his expression serious. "I understand. But I did not choose this for power. I chose it because I believe in you and your people. If anyone tries to harm you or this kingdom, I will stand against them, whether on the battlefield or here in the palace." Alira felt a surge of gratitude. His words were not empty promises. She had seen his courage in battle and now saw it reflected in the careful way he approached the subtle dangers of court politics. For the first time, she realized that protecting someone went beyond fighting with weapons. It also required strategy, patience, and understanding the motives of those around you. Over the following days, tensions grew. Ryan began learning the ways of the court more deeply. He observed conversations, read documents, and studied customs. Alira guided him, explaining how influence worked and how to detect hidden intentions. Together, they formed a quiet strategy to maintain their position without confrontation. Despite their efforts, small acts of defiance appeared. A noble delayed a message meant for the princess. Another questioned the accuracy of a report Ryan had presented. Each act was minor alone, but together, they hinted at a network of opposition. One evening, Alira and Ryan sat in the palace garden, speaking under the glow of the moon. The air was cool, and the scent of flowers was sharp and calming. "They will not give up easily," Alira said. "Some believe they are protecting tradition. Others fear what they do not understand. You are new, and that makes them uneasy." Ryan considered her words. I have faced fear and anger before. This is different, but the principle is the same. We stand for what is right. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We act with patience and honor. Alira nodded, feeling stronger with him beside her. She realized that the shadow of opposition could not weaken her if she and Ryan remained united. Their bond was more than trust, it was a shield, invisible but powerful, built on courage, respect, and shared purpose. The following week, a minor incident tested their alliance. A false report about a supposed threat in the city was presented to the council, clearly designed to discredit Ryan. Some nobles demanded that he be removed from his position near the princess. Alira, calm but firm, addressed the council. Ryan has chosen to serve, not for reward, but for loyalty, she said. His presence does not weaken this kingdom, it strengthens it. I trust him, and I will not be swayed by whispers. The room fell silent. Many nobles bristled at her words, but others began to reconsider. The courage and confidence of their princess carried weight, and the sincerity of Ryan's actions was visible to all who had eyes to see. From that day, the subtle opposition became less aggressive, though it did not disappear entirely. Alira and Ryan knew that shadows in the court would always exist. Yet, they also knew that unity, trust, and integrity were stronger than suspicion and fear. Together, they would face the quiet challenges of politics just as they had faced the chaos of war. Ryan's presence no longer seemed strange or threatening to those who watched carefully. Instead, he became a symbol of loyalty and courage, showing that strength was not only measured in battle but also in patience, respect, and understanding. And so, even within the walls of the palace, a new battle had begun, a battle of trust, influence, and vigilance. For Alira and Ryan, it was another chance to prove that courage could overcome fear, and that the bond between human and princess could face any challenge, whether in the open battlefield or in the shadows of the court. The calm that had settled over the kingdom did not last long. One morning, messengers arrived at the palace with urgent news. Scouts had spotted a fleet of Krell ships approaching the outer borders of the Allied worlds. Though the enemy had been defeated once, it was clear that they were not entirely gone. The Krell sought revenge and aimed to reclaim what they had lost. The palace erupted into activity. Alarm bells rang, guards hurried through corridors, and the council convened in the grand hall. Princess Alira stood at the front, her expression calm but firm. She knew that fear would spread quickly if she showed weakness. Soldiers and advisors looked to her for guidance, and she would not disappoint them. Ryan stood at her side, his armor polished and his sword ready. Though the Krell had been distant for weeks, the soldier's senses were sharp, and his mind focused. He had seen the chaos of war before, and he knew that hesitation could cost lives. The council debated strategy. Some elders suggested a defensive stance, keeping the fleet at bay while building up forces. Others wanted to strike immediately, risking the soldiers in a preemptive attack. The room was filled with tension and uncertainty. Every voice carried weight, but none could match the urgency in Ryan's gaze. He stepped forward and addressed the council. I have fought against the Krell, he said, and I know their tactics. Waiting may allow them to strike first. But a well-planned counterattack can prevent unnecessary loss and protect our people. I can lead the plan, with the princess's support, if the council agrees. The room fell silent. Some doubted a human soldier's ability to command such a strategy, but Alira spoke firmly. Ryan has proven his courage and judgment, she said. I trust him to lead. We cannot afford hesitation. We will act together, humans and allies united. The council reluctantly agreed, recognizing the truth in her words. Ryan's plan required precision, speed, and coordination. Every ship, soldier, and resource had to be deployed carefully. Alira worked beside him, helping to organize communications, supplies, and troop placements. She was no longer merely a figurehead, she became an active part of the strategy, her knowledge of the kingdom and its people complementing Ryan's battlefield experience. As the preparations continued, Ryan trained the soldiers in new tactics. He shared techniques he had learned from battles across the galaxy, emphasizing adaptability, teamwork, and courage. The soldiers responded to his leadership, inspired by his experience and calm determination. They had fought before, but now they fought not only for victory but also for the bond between the princess and the soldier who had chosen to protect her. Alira spent her days visiting the troops, offering encouragement and guidance. She walked among the soldiers, listening to their concerns, and sharing stories of past victories. Her presence brought hope, while Ryan's leadership gave direction. Together, they created a sense of unity that had been missing in previous conflicts. The day of the confrontation arrived. The sky darkened as the Krell fleet approached, their ships casting long shadows across the planet's surface. The soldiers stood ready, their faces determined, their weapons prepared. Alira and Ryan stood together on the command platform, overseeing the deployment. "Remember your training," Ryan said quietly. "Work as one. Trust each other. We fight not only for victory but for every life we protect." Alira nodded. "And remember, courage is stronger than fear. We face them together." The battle began with the roar of engines and weapons fire. Ryan's strategy was precise. He anticipated the Krell's movements and positioned his forces to counter them at every turn. Soldiers followed his commands with discipline, while Alira coordinated the city's defenses and ensured civilians remained safe. The Krell were relentless, but they were met with unexpected strength. Ryan's tactics, combined with the determination of the Allied forces, created a barrier that the enemy could not easily breach. Alira's presence inspired confidence, and her instructions allowed the soldiers to act with clarity and courage. Hours passed, and the battle raged across the skies and the ground. Fires lit the horizon, but the Allied forces held their positions. Ryan moved swiftly between command posts, adjusting strategies and encouraging soldiers. Alira worked tirelessly, ensuring that communication remained uninterrupted and that every decision was coordinated. Finally, the tide began to turn. The Krell fleet, surprised by the unity and skill of the defenders, began to retreat. Ryan and Alira watched as the last ships fled into space, their attack defeated. The kingdom had survived another threat, stronger and more united than before. After the battle, the soldiers cheered for Ryan, but their applause extended to Alira as well. She had proven herself not only as a leader but as a partner, working beside the human soldier to protect her people. Together, they had turned a moment of fear into a demonstration of courage, strategy, and trust. Ryan looked at Alira, his expression calm but proud. "We did it," he said simply. Alira smiled. "We did it together. Not as soldier and princess, but as partners. That is what makes us strong." For the first time in weeks, there was true peace in the command center. The threat had been defeated, and the people of the kingdom could breathe freely. But both Ryan and Alira knew that vigilance would always be necessary. They had faced one threat together, and they were ready to face whatever came next, strengthened by courage, unity, and the bond that had grown between them. The alien queen rested on the reinforced platform, her massive form settling finally after being carried across the battlefield. The shelter was quiet, the low hum of machines and distant sounds of human activity filling the space. Ryan stepped back slightly, his arms still aching from the effort, but his heart felt lighter. For the first time in days, he could feel a sense of calm amidst the chaos of war. The Queen lifted her head slowly. Her eyes, large and reflective, scanned the room and then returned to Ryan. There was no anger, no fear, only a quiet curiosity. She was still a figure of power, yet the weight of her injuries made her appear almost human in vulnerability. Ryan studied her carefully, noting the subtle movements of her body, the slow rise and fall of her chest, the faint shiver in her limbs. She had endured battles that would have ended most lives, yet here she was, alive and aware. Ryan spoke softly, unsure if she could understand his language fully. "You are safe for now," he said. "No one here will harm you." The Queen tilted her head slightly, a gesture that seemed almost like acknowledgement. It was not a wordless surrender, but a recognition that he had acted differently than anyone else. Slowly, she raised one arm, pointing toward a corner of the shelter where a small medical station had been set up. Machines capable of monitoring life signs and providing basic treatment hummed quietly. Ryan nodded, understanding. He helped guide her toward it, careful not to strain her further. She moved with difficulty, each motion deliberate and measured, yet she followed without resistance. As the medical equipment began its work, the Queen's eyes never left Ryan's. He realized that despite all the wars, all the battles, she had never encountered a human who chose mercy over destruction. The realization struck him with quiet intensity. This was not just about a single life, this was about the potential to change the course of history. The Queen's voice resonated, though not aloud. It reached Ryan in the subtle, mental vibration that humans had learned to sense from the Scifi over years of conflict. Her thoughts were clear, deliberate, and calm. She spoke of her people, of the Scifi's fear of humans, and of the battles fought because of misunderstanding and pride. She did not justify her actions, but she explained them with honesty. Ryan listened carefully, realizing that he had never truly understood the enemy. Human reports painted the Scifi as merciless, but the truth was more complex. They fought because they were afraid, because their culture had never known mercy from those they considered enemies. In that moment, Ryan understood that the war had been fueled not only by aggression but by fear and misunderstanding. The Queen paused, and Ryan sensed her hesitation. She had been a ruler for centuries, commanding armies with precision, yet now she was dependent on the compassion of a single human soldier. The contrast was profound. It spoke of strength not only in battle but in trust, in the courage to accept help when it was needed. Ryan spoke again softly. "If we understand each other, maybe the fighting does not need to continue. Maybe there is a way to stop the war without more bloodshed." He did not know if she fully understood, but her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and focused. It was as if she weighed his words, considered their meaning, and found a spark of possibility. Slowly, the Queen shifted, careful not to strain herself. She gestured toward Ryan again, acknowledging his effort. The room seemed to hold its breath in that moment, as if even the walls recognized the significance of what was happening. A bridge had been formed, fragile yet real, between the human soldier and the most feared enemy of humanity. Ryan felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Carrying her had been one choice, now, listening, understanding, and protecting her became another. The future of both humans and Scifi seemed intertwined in that quiet chamber. Every decision, every act of trust, could shape what came next. The Queen's subtle nod suggested agreement, and Ryan realized that for the first time, two beings from opposing sides had found common ground. Not through force, not through fear, but through recognition of each other's strength and vulnerability. The war could continue, yet this moment had planted a seed for change. Outside, the distant sounds of battle reminded him that danger had not disappeared. Yet within the shelter, a fragile understanding had emerged. Humans and Scifi were not bound to fight endlessly. A single act of compassion could shift the course of history, and Ryan understood that he had been the instrument of that change. He looked at the Queen, who now rested with a measure of comfort on the medical platform. Her eyes held no fear, only awareness and reflection. She had seen many soldiers, many enemies, but none had acted like him. The human soldier who chose mercy had created a new understanding between two species. In that quiet chamber, Ryan realized that the act of lifting her had been more than physical. It had been a bridge, a choice to value life and to see beyond the labels of enemy and friend. The Queen's trust was now his responsibility, and he would honor it. This moment, fragile yet powerful, was the beginning of something new, a chance for peace built not on weapons, but on courage, understanding, and compassion. The shelter was quiet, filled with the soft hum of machines monitoring the alien Queen's condition. Outside, the war still raged, but inside, a fragile calm had settled. Ryan stood nearby, watching her carefully. Every movement she made was measured, careful, and he remained alert to assist whenever needed. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose that went beyond orders, battles, or victory. The Queen's eyes, large and reflective, followed his every move. She was learning, slowly, that not all humans were bound by fear and aggression. Ryan had acted differently, and in doing so, he had shown her a new perspective. Trust, courage, and understanding were powerful weapons, far stronger than rifles or alien technology. Slowly, the Queen lifted her head, and Ryan could sense her attention focused entirely on him. She spoke in the subtle mental resonance that the Scifi used to communicate. His mind understood the words, clear and deliberate. She expressed surprise, curiosity, and acknowledgement of his actions. She had never encountered mercy like this before. Not in battle, not in her long life as a ruler. Ryan responded gently. There is a chance for change. Not all fighting must continue. We can find another way. The Queen's gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and still. She understood, perhaps more deeply than he could imagine, that one choice had altered the path of two species. In the following days, the shelter became a place of quiet negotiation and observation. Human commanders were cautious but curious. They saw the alien Queen alive, aware, and now dependent on humans for care. Some officers hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Ryan explained, calmly and firmly, that she was not a threat in the state and that harming her would only continue the cycle of hatred. Slowly, the human leaders began to see the truth of his words. The Queen began to communicate more clearly, sharing knowledge about the Scifi, their strategies, and the history that had driven them to war. She spoke not to justify her people's actions, but to explain them. Humans listened carefully. They realized that fear and misunderstanding had fueled the conflict just as much as aggression and pride. Ryan's single act of mercy had opened the door for this dialogue. Outside the shelter, skirmishes continued, but they were smaller, less intense. Word spread of the human soldier who had carried the alien Queen to safety. The story traveled through military channels and even reached civilians. It became a symbol of courage and compassion, showing that strength could exist without violence. The Queen began to regain a little strength each day. Ryan helped her move carefully, ensuring she did not strain herself. Each motion was a reminder of the bond that had formed between them. She was still a powerful ruler, but now she had seen another side of humanity, one capable of mercy, courage, and understanding. Human leaders and Scifi advisors eventually met under careful supervision. The Queen's survival allowed for dialogue that had seemed impossible before. Discussions began slowly, with tension and caution, but the atmosphere was different. The act of one soldier carrying her across the battlefield had created a new reality. Trust, fragile and delicate, began to take root. Ryan watched as both sides listened, spoke, and learned from each other. The Queen's wisdom and honesty helped the humans understand the Scifi perspective, while his courage showed both species that strength could be shown through compassion. It was a delicate balance, but progress was made. The war did not end immediately, but the first steps toward lasting peace had begun. Each side learned that conflict could be avoided when understanding and dialogue replaced fear and aggression. The image of a human soldier carrying the alien queen remained in the minds of everyone who heard the story. It became a symbol, a lesson, and a memory of hope. The queen herself acknowledged Ryan in private moments, her eyes reflecting gratitude and respect. She understood that without his choice, without his courage to act differently, the opportunity for peace would not exist. Ryan had lifted more than her body, he had lifted the possibility of change, a chance for both humans and Scifi to see beyond fear and hate. In time, small agreements were made, and ceasefires began to hold. The Queen returned to her people, not as a ruler demanding vengeance, but as a guide who had seen that compassion could be stronger than fear. Humans and Scifi began to rebuild, cautiously, learning from past mistakes, and choosing cooperation when possible. Ryan continued his duties, but he carried the memory of that moment in the ruined stronghold. He had faced the greatest enemy of humanity and had chosen mercy over destruction. That choice had reshaped the course of events, proving that heroism could exist in unexpected forms. Strength was not only in weapons or victories but in courage, understanding, and compassion. As the sun rose over the battlefield, light spilled across both human and Scifi lands. It was not a world fully healed, but it was a world where hope had taken root. And in that new dawn, the story of the human soldier and the alien queen became a lesson for all, a reminder that even in war, mercy could change everything.